Memorial Day weekend, it was a bust for most swimmers ready to start the pool season. It was rainy, it was chilly, weather kept most folks out of the water. But this weekend looks fantastic for all who want to swim. So before you head out to the pool, we're talking to Cunn and Mitchell Lawrence. Both of these guys work for the YMCA of Northwest North Carolina, and they're experts when it comes to swimming and water safety. We want you to be able to ask them whatever swimming and water safety question that you may have. You can text us those questions. That's 336-379-5775. All questions are asked anonymously, but they are answered in real time. So we invite you to ask the experts. All right, so Mitch, first and foremost, let's just kind of talk about big picture, why safety in and around water is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So drowning is actually the leading cause of accidental death in children ages 1 to 4. And it's the second leading cause of accidental death in all children under 15 years of age, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And on average, these lives, the lives of 3 children per day end as a result of drowning, with many more ending up in the hospital due to near drownings. Learning basic water safety skills definitely saves lives, and it is a great introduction to the world of swimming. So we would encourage folks to really consider that because we don't want to see any children lose their life due to drowning.
And I think so often it happens so fast, people don't realize just how fast it can happen.
Yes, it can happen so fast and silently too, so they can slip below the surface of the water without even making a sound, and it's very dangerous.
All right, we're going to talk about that a little later on because he said slip below the surface. He didn't say they were splashing around yelling for help. He said they slip below the surface. That's a different kind of drowning than what most of us kind of think about when we think about like what's in the movies and that kind of stuff. So Chris, let's talk about what are some basic water safety tips.
Sure. So whether you're an adult or a kid, just always remember there are some basic rules that need to be followed. Making sure children know to always ask permission before going in or near the water. So teaching your children to be water smart is the first step in water safety, and be sure they understand the importance of asking permission before going in or near the water. Never swim alone or without a water watcher. So when children are swimming, make sure they are actively supervised at all times. Teach your children that they should only swim in locations where a lifeguard is on duty or where a responsible adult agrees to watch the children in the water without distractions. Supervise children whenever they're in or near water, whether it's bath time or taking a dip into the pool or waterfront. Make sure your children are within arm's reach at all times. And then don't engage in breath holding activities. Adults and children should not hold their breath for prolonged amount of times while swimming, as this can be dangerous. And then the last thing is to wear a life jacket. Inexperienced or non-swimmers should wear a U.S. Coast Guard approved life jacket, and it should be appropriately sized for the swimmer. And actually, Tanya, I brought a life jacket because a lot of times we get a question what is Coast Guard approved or non-Coast Guard approved. So on your life jacket, most of our life jackets look like this right here. There is a tag on the back of the life jacket, and I know that's a little difficult for you guys to see, but it will indicate that it's U.S. Coast Guard approved, and that is what we as the YMCA recommend for all swimmers when swimming, and it's another precaution to keep kids safe in and around water.
I know a lot of times people think, well, they're just going to be in the shallow end. It's not that big of a deal. They don't really need that life jacket.
Correct. I mean, that is like a realistic thought that a lot of parents have, but it's always important to take that extra safety precaution because like Mitchell said, a child could slip under the water, even an adult can slip under the water in less than a minute. And so it could happen in the blink of an eye, honestly. So yeah, I would agree that keeping a life jacket on is very important, and it's just a precaution for drowning.
Right. So when you said slip underneath the water, let's talk about that, because I think a lot of us think about what's in the movies, people drowning, they're flailing around, they're calling for help, that kind of thing. They're gasping for air. What does drowning actually look like?
So I can speak to that. And basically what happens when somebody is drowning a lot of times is they actually are struggling to keep themselves above the water. Their arms aren't able to get all the way out of the surface of the water. So they're in a vertical position with their head tilted back, and their chin and their nose and their mouth are really the only things that are protruding, and they're really just struggling to stay afloat at that point. So most of the time when an actual drowning is occurring and somebody is struggling in the water, they don't flail about like they do in the movies. It's a underwater situation where only their face is out, and when the water starts to slide in past the muscle that closes off the airway, once it starts, that muscle is actually incapable of closing, and the water just continues to pour in. So it's very unfortunate, but usually when that happens, the individual is also not going to make a conscious decision to use noise to try to get help, because they're trying to keep every bit of air that they have. Their body's telling themselves, hey, this is not a good situation for us, so we're going to keep all the air that we have, and we're not going to make any noise. So most of the time they don't yell, they don't holler for help, and they don't splash above the water. If they're truly drowning, then what happens is most of the time it's all underwater stuff, and then they slip below the surface without making a noise. And that's the unfortunate part, is most of the time it's things that we could recognize if we're watching, which is why we use lifeguards at the YMCA of Northwest North Carolina. But outside of that, if somebody's not supervising those children and they start to struggle in that way, it's not really going to be easy to notice, and they can slide below the surface of the water before anything is heard or seen.
Okay, so it is quiet. All right. So we're going to be talking about what to do if you're seeing somebody struggling. We're going to be talking about that when we come back from the break. Again, 336-379-5775. We'll be right back.